everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our July 12th meeting tonight, and with that, if you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stand for 10 seconds of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. Deanne, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Vaughn,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hausberg,
Here.
Commissioner Hanna,
Yes, here.
Commissioner McCall,
Here.
Mayor Kennedy.
Here. Thank you, Deanne. With that, we'll start with our presentations, the report of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I'd like to tell everyone that the sheriff comes here 15 minutes before the meeting, so if anyone would like to have a conversation with him in private, you may at that time. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Sergeant Switch with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, and I am going to be presenting the statistics for the month of June 2022. We'll begin with the UCR property and person crimes, and you will see that there were 4 assaults. I believe all of those were just domestic related incidents. And then you will see 7 burglaries. It's an ongoing investigation, can't really give too much detail on it. But what I will tell you, it was all isolated to the harbor, the Marker 33 harbor side. And we believe it was an inside job with one of the employees there that went into the rooms of vacationers. So they're still investigating that to try to put some closure to it. And then you will see a motor vehicle theft. And actually what that was, it looks like through research, it was an electric bicycle, but one of the higher end electric bicycles that was taken from under a carport. And then there were a total of 18 people arrested within the city. And again, you'll see there that there were some domestic related batteries and there were some DUIs in there as well. And moving on, you will see that traffic enforcement led for the month of June with a total of 996 events throughout the city for all the deputy activity. And moving on, there were a total of 4 crashes in the city. And then for citations and warnings, there were a total of 225 combinations of citation and warnings. And if I were to break that down further, it looks like there were 159 warnings. There were 38 parking citations issued, 23 traffic citations, and then some boating violations in there as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you. How did you feel about 4th of July? How did it go? How did the sheriffs feel about it?
Mayor, actually, I was pleasantly surprised with the way it went, and not just with Indian Rocks Beach, but believe it or not, the entire county. We were anticipating coming in Friday night. The sheriff and the staff put on a lot of extra deputies out there. I did not work the actual 4th itself. I worked that weekend, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it was, again, I was pleasantly surprised. I can say the word now. It was very quiet. We were anticipating much more activity on the beach, especially on the sand and everything, and from Madeira all the way up to Bel Air Beach, Bel Air Bluffs. It was very quiet.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Sheriff at this time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 1B is Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue, and Chief Jeffrey Davidson, if you would like to come forward at this time.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm Jeffrey Davidson, Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue District, Fire Chief. I have the monthly report for the month of June. We had 86 total calls for service in Indian Rocks Beach, of which 21 of those were fire related, and 65 of them were EMS related, with an average response time of 4 minutes and 28 seconds. With our EMS, 65 EMS, that included 5 water rescue calls, and I wanted to tell you about one of them. A lot of times we get some good intent calls, and thank goodness we have good statistics when it comes to water safety. But the following Marine incident was on June 21st. There was multiple callers, said that there was a individual that couldn't swim. She had flipped out of a tube about 100 feet past the buoys. It was a 14-year-old female. And they called 911 right away. The fire department arrived on scene in 2 minutes. We assessed the scene. We put 2 rescue swimmers in the water with a rescue board. They swam out, assessed her, brought her back to safety, and transferred her to medical care within 9 minutes total, which is great. She did not have any medical issues with that whatsoever. So we trained quite a bit with our water rescue agencies out there. We have 2 Marine units. We have the busiest Marine unit in the county because we cover Sunwoods Beach, but we also have the only beach launchable Marine unit, as well as a boat that we keep on the intercoastal side as well. So you see us out there a lot of times. You see us out there training quite a bit, especially in these months, and we're happy to serve. So, any questions you have?
Can you just reiterate about the weekend for the autistic?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was next on my list. So last month, we were happy to be here, and the city manager presented us with some sensory kits that we were using for autistic children. Anytime we encounter them, they keep them calm. And we did put those together. We put a policy together on how they're deployed, and they're on all our emergency vehicles. But this coming Saturday, Friday, July 16th, from 9 to 12, right here on 18th Street. Is that 18th Street or 17th Street? Access?
17 and 18.
Okay, that one.
Yeah.
We'll be right over there. And we're having our first Paddle for Autism event. It's a free event, and we have 24 paddlers that are registered. And it's hopefully the first of many. We're hoping to do this, maybe quarterly or 3 times a year. We know it's going to be a successful event, but it's from 9 a.m. in the morning until 12 noon. It's free, absolutely free, and we hope to see the community there.
That's great, Jeff. Jeff from TVN, I just wanted to say you'll be putting something about that in the paper so that, because you have room for how many?
Well, this year, because it's our inaugural, our first one, so we try and keep it small, so we kept it to 24 paddlers. But as we learn how to put them together, and we're not so much in the busy season with July, we'll do the off season, we'll grow that number. But we have 24.
You do have 24? Because I
We
didn't think you
do.
had it. Okay,
We
good.
do. Well, we hadn't had that
I
many.
thought you only had 13.
No, well, then some autistic groups had reached out and they heard the information, and 5 more registered today, and then there's a few more that haven't registered that are just going to show up. So, and then we have about 40 volunteers as well. So we'll have tents there with refreshments and ice and water, and I think there's going to be some acoustic music. We got to be careful with the music with the children. But we'll have someone there playing some music, and there'll be some activities in between, and we'll put the paddlers out in 3 different groups, so they'll go 8 at a time. And then with every paddler, we'll have at least 2 or 3 swimmers, volunteers around them as well to keep them safe. We have a life jacket program in place, and of course the Sheriff's Office is going to help us out there. It's going to be a great thing. So one of many, hopefully.
Anyone have any questions for?
I do.
Yes.
I do. Jeff, I'm just doing kind of like a tally poll, like of the amount of calls you do every month, how many of them are to actual IRB residents and how many of them are going to our visitors and rentals?
There would really be no way to pull it. I could pull the data and try to cross-reference them with the addresses, but as far as like the medical calls, their names, those are all protected health information, so we couldn't share that. But as far as responses, I would be able to say, a percentage if I looked into it, and I'll do that for you.
Okay.
Okay?
That's a good question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Anything else?
Yeah, just a
Yes.
quick question. The other day, like 5 or 6 trucks went blazing by my house and up into the neighborhood. I was just curious, and I think I saw you driving around. I was just curious what it was. It's like it's sunset last week.
The sunset last week.
5 trucks, 6 trucks. all
5,
went
6
out-
trucks?
5 or 6 trucks, all went out 7th Avenue at the same time.
7. I have to look it up. I'll get back to you on that.
All right, I'm
I'll get it
curious.
for sure. I'll let you know. 100%. Okay?
Anyone else?
All right.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for your time.
Next is agenda item number 2, public comment. Each will have 3 minutes. Any member of the audience may come forward, give their name and address, and state any comment or concern that they have regarding any matter of which the City Commission has control, excluding agenda items. All statements made to the City Commission shall be made to the City Commission as a whole, not directed to any individual City Commissioner, and no personal or slanderous remarks shall be permitted. No speaker shall be named, and no debate shall take place between the speaker and the City Commission. Is there anyone who would like to come forward at this time? Please state your name.
John Fansfield, 448 Harbor Drive South. You all look good tonight. It's glad to be back here. I'd like to follow up on a topic from last meeting. And like many people in the town, I feel that party houses for transients that are adjacent to a resident's home are about the worst threat you can imagine to a safe place to raise children and to a peaceful retirement for senior citizens. Now, of course, IRB has hundreds of party houses in residential neighborhoods. We didn't have this problem 11 years ago. We had a 3-month minimum. I'm hoping with fresh minds on the commission, we'll now be able to put a top priority on doing our best to minimize or eliminate this, and that you'll commit substantial resources to restoring the safety and peace of our neighborhoods. Just locally, we can do this by directing the city staff to search for all ads for short-term IRB residential neighborhood, searching Airbnb, VRBO, Craigslist, etc., to make sure all clearly show the city-issued business tax number on all online advertising as per ordinance 2018-01. And then list all known short-term rentals online so the neighbors can determine if nearby rentals are legal, and including in that the necessary items: Florida Department of Revenue Certificate of Registration, Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation License, City Business Tax Record, and their sworn statement that the property is in compliance with all city codes. Again, per ordinance 2818. And then also put all complaints registered to that property so the public can see it. There's other things, I'll send you a copy of this so I won't bore you with them right now. But the main purposes, of course, is to make it less desirable to have party houses in Indian Rocks Beach. On the state level, I don't think we should give up. I think we ought to pay for a legal opinion from a specialized counsel as to whether the elimination of IRB's grandfather status can be challenged on 3 different levels, and I'll send you those too. And then form an alliance with the 5 Florida counties that are most affected, which Pinellas is one of them, the hotel lobby, and existing groups like Airbnb Watch. We've all been going at this separately, and we should gather together, because then we need to get together with them and spend money to hire a lobbyist. I don't like that thought of just throwing up our hands and saying we're going to give up on this town, and it's going to become a tourist trap and not a place for families and seniors. So I hope a majority of you will make a motion tonight for a workshop to examine potential actions and then eventually commit substantial resources to taking our neighborhoods back. I feel we need to eliminate or minimize unmonitored party houses for transients that are next to seniors and children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Very good. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time?
Jerry Newton, 438 Harbor Drive North. I'll make a few comments. I think everybody here has to know by now that the vacation rentals, weekly rentals, however you want to define it, John calls them party houses, they're not the people's will here. That is not why we invested in this neighborhood, in this city. That is not in the best interest of our city, unless maybe there's a lot of tax revenue. Maybe there's something there that makes sense from a city management point of view as opposed to a resident's point of view. But even if that's the case, you're ruining our neighborhoods. We are rapidly spreading cancer through our residential neighborhoods. in Indian Rocks Beach. And I don't believe any one of you has that intent, but it's happening, and it continues to happen. And we keep saying there's nothing we can do about it. And we keep saying we have to do something about it. As residents, as investors in this city, as family members, we've got to find something to do about it. My true feeling is that if we care about representing our residents in Indian Rocks Beach, we have to find a way to deal with this and to limit it, to restrict it, to monitor it somehow that's going to discourage that activity. I appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there anyone else at this time who'd like to come forward? Hi.
Adrienne Goss's 2008 Gulf Boulevard. I wanted to bring attention to a problem we're starting to have, it's starting to reoccur. When the signs were taken down at the parking lots for no parking after 11 o'clock on the beach access, which was less than a year ago, we've had constant troubles on the beach access. It is now turned into an RV campground. People are spending the night in the cars, and I feel like the police are busy dealing with other stuff. But I just want to bring attention that since those signs were taken away and just a plain public beach parking has been put up, we're not getting, I guess, great people late at night, and they're leaving a lot of trash. It's that the residents are constantly picking up. So I just wanted to bring attention. I talked to the code enforcement about it, but I just wanted to let you guys know also it's starting to become a big problem in the city.
Adrian, what, are you talking about your street that you live on?
21st, yes. And we actually have RVs camping in the parking lots. Actual RVs. And people are sleeping in their cars. And I know we have the housing crisis and everything else taking place, so. And then I'm constantly dealing with one of my neighbors next door that has abandoned property. The Pinellas County Sheriff is visiting it once a week because there's people sleeping on the porch. Or doing
You
extra.
have contacted the city about both of these?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. It's good to see you.
It's been a while. Beth Flynn, 914 Harbor House Drive. I'm going to follow along with two of my fellow residents talking about the short-term rentals. I was very excited to see that the topic came back up in the minutes from last month's meeting, and I was excited to see that we're having continued discussion. I know the state has put some guardrails or shackles in regards to what we can do as a city. But I do think there are things that we can do. We may not be able to control frequency and duration right now, but we can control the number of people. We can control the number of cars. We can control the noise. We can make sure that our ordinances are enforced for that type of activity. I think Pinellas County also has some rules and guidelines that they submit. I was going to go look for it again. I showed it to one of the members earlier, but I'll find it and share it with the commission. They do have a registration form in regards to registering in Pinellas County, and it does have limitations in regards to the number of people in a house and the number of cars that can be allowed in a property. So I do know that you guys are doing your best trying to figure out what we can do, especially based on the fact that we don't have our own city rules. But I do think it's very important that we address it. I think we need to be much more upfront and informed about what's going on from a citizen perspective. I read the letter that you guys posted out on the board, the letter from May 2016 that got posted on July 1st. To be honest, I'm not an attorney, so I have no idea what it says. I think it says basically that you can't do frequency and duration, and there are other things that you can do. I'm interested in what those other things are that we can do, because we can make a difference. Indian Rocks Beach is too special to allow it to become a party house, or even just to have too many transient people that are creating unlivable conditions for people. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Anyone else at this time? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public comment, and I'm going to look to Randy Moore. Do you have any comments tonight?
No comment, no comments, Madam Mayor.
Do you want to speak to the occupancy, just so that at this time?
I don't, but if you'd like me to, I'm happy to.
I would like you to. He and I had this conversation about this yesterday.
Mayor, you've asked me to speak to the ability of the jurisdiction to regulate occupancy as part of its regime regulating short-term vacation transient rentals. As a statement of law, you can regulate occupancy, and I've never asserted anything to the contrary. I have said in the past that other communities have regulated occupancy and faced significant legal challenges to those. I had the fortune of representing successfully another jurisdiction who passed occupancy restrictions and successfully defended those. Those were premised upon comprehensive plan amendments that had been in place in 2009, which was the basis of that legal victory, if you will, that it was premised on regulations that had been in place before 2011 and sort of simply codifying those. There's nothing in 5090327B that prohibits the regulation of occupancy. One of the core challenges that communities face when regulating occupancy is the enforceability of the measure. That's not to say it's altogether an impossibility, but the enforceability and the resources required to be directed to that, especially if you make occupancy tied to the number of bedrooms, then what you need to do is have the data point of exactly how many bedrooms are in every single structure operated as a rental, which is typically done through an inspection regime, which is, again, resources, bureaucracy, et cetera. It's, again, not to say it's an impossibility. It is an administrative challenge and legal challenge, to put it mildly. On top of the how you're going to tie that to, if you're tying it to a bedroom and how you define a bedroom, the other element of that is excuse me, is how you objectively establish that fact once the measure goes before a local ordinance violation court or code compliance magistrate or code enforcement board. From an evidentiary standard, if a neighbor says, hey, I'm at 123 Gulf Boulevard over at 456, they've got 30 people, 30 overnight guests there in violation, and then code enforcement personnel responds to the scene and says, okay, I've got, suggestion that you've got 30. They say, no, we've got 12. These people are staying up the street. Those people are just here to watch the big game. Everybody's going home. We know the rules. We're playing by it. How you objectively establish that over the strong and quite legitimate objection of the neighbor who's saying, I just saw it. What's your problem? Well, I need to go before a court and say, this is how I can prove that X amount of people were actually over there as overnight guests and not as people visiting the property at any given time. And so that's another challenge. Depending on how that's codified, the other challenge is whether that's done in a way that uniformly applies throughout the city, such that we do not now put residents, every time they have a party for a christening, a bat mitzvah, Sweet 16, the Super Bowl, the boat parade in December, then now our residents are not somehow in violation of occupancy limitations. As it relates to parking, this commission had several hearings on parking, both in the residential and beach access areas, and discussed at length what it was and was not willing to do, whether that be limiting parking on certain sides of the street, in the grass, etc. When you start talking about parking limitations, again, you're looking more generally at a restriction that may apply equally throughout the community, which again is, there are residents in this town who are accustomed, in the city, who are accustomed to certain ways and may find that to be upsetting, as we saw just the simple idea that some places might have one decal versus two decals, or one street parking space versus two street parking spaces can be rather contentious. I want to be very, very clear in my statements that I am not a policymaker in your community. Your manager is not a policymaker in your community. You folks are the policymakers. We help try to make sure your policy is sound, inform your policy decision-making process, but nothing in your code is because it is the specific will of the manager or the city attorney. We're here to advise. If there's a direction the majority of this council wishes to take, I will investigate it, I will provide you counsel, and you can proceed, ignore, and do as you wish. You are the policymakers, and that is your power, and I want to be very clear about that. And I also want to be clear that my job is to make sure that as you go down any particular policy direction, to provide you with the, where the dangers may be, where the challenges may be. That is always conjecture. I can never say, just because something may not be enforceable, I can't tell you that it will be challenged, though it could be. We find in communities like the beaches, where people tend to have time and resources, you tend to get challenges, especially because of the amount of money that residents and operators around the properties alike have invested into these properties. The other challenge is, and I was talking about this with one of the council members or commissioners beforehand, beyond parking and occupancy, is this particular issue is one that has evolved since 2011 with additional developments in 2014. We've had an intervening global pandemic in the middle that substantially changed both the economic, public health, and property landscapes in Florida and otherwise. And the idea of just putting that toothpaste back in the tube or the genie back in the bottle is slightly more challenging than it may first seem. You have families whose entire livelihood is dependent on how they're using their properties and the economic engines of this community, and trying to balance those interests. I'm not insensitive to the concerns of the members of the public and the longtime residents of this community. I know I speak like Spock and clinical, and it's uncaring. Don't worry, I'm married. I hear that as well. I will tell you that I'm sensitive to the fact that the way that the laws have changed in Florida in the last 10 years, you've seen a change in what home-based businesses can be. You've seen a change in how transient rentals operate. You've seen a change in the Burt-Harris Act and challenges to land use regulations. Thankfully, one more striking measure this term got vetoed by the governor, which would have made this body potentially liable for how it regulates businesses. But all of that substantially leads to a change in what your community looks like. That change is not specifically the fault of the 5 people sitting up here or their predecessors. They're working with fettered hands and doing what they can, but I can tell you that my statements are not intended to be insensitive. I understand that folks in this room have invested in a quiet room on a cul-de-sac and didn't intend to live next door to, as it's been described, a hotel or a Holiday Inn, and my statements aren't intended to bat an eye or just say, oh, well, that's nothing, get over it. It's just the challenges of what we can and can't do and what's practical. There's also the challenges of what you can do, but should you do? And so we're trying to balance those interests, and that's all I would add at this point, Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Randy at this time? Yes.
Randy, when you prevailed in your action for another city, was there much precedent as far as other communities throughout the state that helped in going that direction?
No. Short answer, no. Longer answer, that community is considered, it's the city of Holmes Beach, it's all public record. It's the city of Holmes Beach.
Okay.
They faced several $1 million in liability for Burt-Harris cases, for regulations concerning the number of rooms permitted in a structure and the amount of occupancy permitted in a structure. All of those were really part of their short-term rental regime and an ordinance done to adopt that. They had dozens, quite literally dozens of cases. Ultimately, they settled after the city prevailed on a handful of occupancy cases, and both in different levels of the litigation process. Those were the remaining suits settled, in part reading the tea leaves, in part because the parties had fought their fight. Their regime is very, very specific. Well, the way that they passed theirs was they passed the bedroom and occupancy restrictions as part of an entire short-term rental regime. For those of you who have been tuned into for the last few seasons of the show, they went with Coke. Not Coke, not Diet Coke, not Coke Zero. They went with Coke, and that was an analogy I used in the past to say the different levels of regulation you can do. And what they have is a vacation rental certificate in addition to the business tax receipt. The vacation rental certificate, their code enforcement department, before any property is permitted, they had full-time people whose job it was to inspect a property in tandem with the building department to determine what the number of bedrooms are, what the property layout was, whether it conformed to any number of safety measures, check box, check box, check box. Right. You paid your money, you got your vacation rental certificate. That vacation rental certificate was then registered and everything else, but it was more than just we've got our list. It's a full-time job for some folks, investigating, reporting on, et cetera. Theirs is a robust regime. That was presented as an option to this community at the time. It was not the direction it wished to go. And that, again, I am not the policymaker, the manager's not the policymaker.
Okay, great, thanks so much.
Anyone else? Joe? Greg, your report?
Good evening. I've got just 3 or 4 things. I invite Mark Porter to come up. Mark Porter is with Utility Consultants of Florida. They're the designated, per the commission, engineering firm that's handling the Phase 2 Gulf Boulevard undergrounding project. It's about a $5 million project. As the commission would recall, those funds come down from Dallas County. And I asked Mark to come up, give you all a brief update on how that's going.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, and Commissioners, for allowing me to come in and provide a brief update on the undergrounding. For the record, I'm Mark Porter with Utility Consultants of Florida, the principal in charge. Our firm does a lot of work throughout the state of Florida, but this one is an extremely exciting project for me because it's in my backyard, so I just wanted to kind of say that we're very grateful to be part of that. So briefly with Duke, we've had really good interaction with Duke throughout the project, some of our other projects. We've actually just received, in the last week, we got the preliminary design. It does identify the potential easement locations. I'll talk about that in a minute. We are creating a project phasing that'll be in line with the fiscal budgetary allowances that you have each year. So what we're trying to do in essence is take it from the 5th where it left off all the way up to 19th. We're trying to see if we go maybe a little past that or where that limit might be. But what we're trying to do is break it out so that it fits within that fiscal allotment of money each year. So it's a very smooth transition, and it doesn't add a lot of extra equipment or hardware. We're doing it so we can keep it very cost efficient, schedule efficient. Real quick with the next slide with the communication companies. So you have both Charter/Spectrum and Frontier. Same thing, phenomenal. I had great working relationships with them today. In parallel with the Duke design, they're working on their designs, we're working with them. It'll actually follow a lot of what Duke's doing, those phasing approach that I talked about. We'll kind of continue in that aspect as well. We're also working to kind of dial in their cost and their actual infrastructure for that as well. So the next slide, just wanted to briefly talk about the easements. We've been out and looked at several locations. We know that, the undergrounding has a lot of benefits from safety, a lot of that, but, at the end of the day, aesthetics is also important. It kind of creates a very nice aesthetic appeal. So as we're looking at these easement locations, we're trying to be mindful of that, making sure that those are strategically placed to kind of hide them a little bit as much as possible. So as we continue to kind of identify those locations, we'll continue to work with staff and make sure that they're included in that. The next slide is our moving forward, where we're at and what we're projecting. So on the next slide, with Duke, basically what we're doing is trying to get that final design implemented and create those phasing. So, they don't necessarily wind up being exactly, if you have a mile project, quarter mile, quarter mile, quarter mile, they'll be based on logistics with the sequencing of the materials and equipment. So we'll be working on that. Unilaterally, we'll also be working to secure the easements, and we'll start any permitting. We don't have the FDOT permitting process in this corridor, but we do have some things with Pinellas County. And then obviously get the BC in, so we know those final costs from Duke's portion to work, and get the materials started. Kind of concurrently with that, Frontier and Spectrum will also be involved in that process. It'll kind of run hand in hand. What we wanted to do was bring them on early on so that it's just a very smooth process, not wait till the end to get the carriers. We want to try to make sure as soon as the power lines are out, ready to go, the conversions are in place, and we're doing the switching orders, we've got the carriers coming right behind that effort. So we also are still holding a projected construction start of this fall. We've been pushing pretty hard on that. If things continue to fall in line with what they are right now, we should be good. I put a note in there for the strategic approach. That's just basically what we like to do is, just the transparency helps with the effort in construction. We also live here, so it's important to understand seasonality, things like that. So when we get close to the construction component, we want to be mindful that the outreach, the messaging, working with city staff is in place so that there's no surprises or the expectations are very clear. So we take that with a lot of pride. So with that, love to answer any questions. And like I said, we're completely thrilled to be part of this project and it being in our backyard. So thank you.
Does anyone on the commission have any questions at this time? That's good. Greg? Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
A few more things to go through.
Okay.
Code enforcement report for the month, there were 78 parking citations, and those are above and beyond the report that we received earlier. 3 notice of violations, 7 notices to appear in court, and 2 courtesy letters. The legislature passed a law that provides local governments with the opportunity to regulate or restrict smoking on the public beach. Unfortunately, and there must be a real strong cigar lobby in Tallahassee, the law that they passed outlawed filtered tobacco or cigarettes, but for some reason you can still smoke cigars on the beach if you choose to regulate that. So what I sent y'all an email. I'd ask that we just have a work session at the next meeting where Randy and I can brief y'all on the law, and we can talk about the pros and cons of it. If you adopt a local ordinance, the pros and cons of enforcement and some things that we may run into. It's just amazing to me that we can never get a clean bill of law out of Tallahassee. There always has to be some twist, and what I mean by that is just imagine that your desire is to adopt an ordinance that prohibits smoking based on the limitations that they placed on it. You know, to me, it's easier to have a law in place that says you're going to not allow smoking, you just don't allow smoking. So that way, a code enforcement person or a deputy, if they're on the beach, and they look down the beach and they see the plume of smoke coming up, they can go up into you and say, like, the city's adopted an ordinance, you're in violation of the ordinance, you need to put it out, or they can cite you. Now, the way this is written, a deputy or a code person has got to go up and look at what you're smoking and figure out whether it's a cigar or not, and do all that. So anyway, you know, it's been in the newspaper and the big cities talked about it, so I'd ask that be a work session item so we can talk about that. Just a couple other things. Fireworks were mentioned earlier. We actively have pursued enforcing the fireworks laws that have been on the books here for decades, and that was with the consensus of the commission. And ever since then, we've done a lot of education and through additional staff out. This past July 4th, we had an extra supervisor and 3 extra deputies out, in addition to our normal deputies. Both of our code people were out, and the fire chief and the previous fire chief, they've always helped us. They had their staff out in the neighborhoods, communicating and trying to educate the public about fireworks. It was very successful, and I told the commission years ago, if you thought this effort was going to result in the elimination of every bottle rocket, you know, we're not singing the same song here, but I can tell you that for the almost decade that I've been here, the first year I was here, it was like Afghanistan, out on the beach, and now it's controllable. And I would just make a recommendation to the public. It's not a real smart idea to put on Facebook that you spent $800 for fireworks and then tell us where you're going to be for us to go there. That's quite an entertaining story. A deputy, of course, I made the sheriff's office aware of the Facebook page because I was sent multiple text messages about that. A deputy in an ATV hung out in the area, and because the person who bought the $800 worth of fireworks invited the public to come watch this show. There was about over 100 people there waiting for the display. The deputy got there and started to inquire about, what are y'all doing here? And of course, we knew why they were there. And long story short, there was a gentleman who was standing over next to one of our trash cans on the beach, and they had piled some garbage on top of it, and the $800 worth of fireworks were in the can, so those were seized, and the gentleman who was going to put on the display, I think, was cited for violation. So, it's do your own research. the fire chief and Captain Liner, I can bring them in here anytime and talk to you about the dangers of us going about like we were several years ago. But it's a lot safer, and we'll continue those efforts. Comment earlier about beach accesses. The house that was mentioned that's close to the 21st beach access, that's the house that several months ago we had a public hearing on. As a result, the city demolished the dilapidated garage that was on the property. We had to routinely cut it and clean it. We had to board the house up 2 or 3 times. Either we're finished or a person on Randy's staff, we're in the process of leaning the property owner for several $1,000s worth of work that's been done there with the demolition of other things. So this owner may not pay it, but if the property's sold and it's beachfront property, at some point you think it is, someone will have to pay that tab. So we're actually working as far as people on the porch, just like any other piece of property, whether it's occupied or not. If somebody's hanging out there, they're sleeping, the best thing to do is call the non-emergency number of the sheriff's office, and they'll go deal with it. But this, fortunately, in my world, with dealing with our city, we have very limited number of properties that have that degree of code enforcement issues, but that's one of them. And I think that's all I have, Mayor. I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Any questions for Greg at this point? I think that in a few days, Greg will be with us a decade. And I just want to say thank you for your time with us. There are a million reasons why I could tell you he's awesome. We have, I think we're one of 2 cities that still don't have a stormwater fee or a utility tax. Our finances are in awesome shape, which they were not in 2008 and 9 when I first got back on the commission, and then when we, the group at that time, we went out and got a new city manager, and Greg was our city manager, and I can't say enough about the job he's done. He came here at the very beginning of the short-term rentals. He put in place 2 code enforcers, and all of our parks and our streets, and there's our infrastructure. There are so many things that I could say about him. And I just want to say thank you for your service. We appreciate you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate that. Let me just say I'm thankful for that. I've enjoyed every minute that I've worked here and hope to work here several more years. But I would neglect my responsibilities for not thanking the commission and the various commissions that I work with, because every group has always been supportive, and we've always worked together to figure things out. And just as important, the staff that we have. The vacation rental thing is a very tough issue. I've said before, my observations and concerns that, what was a small city with cottages is rapidly changing. Our population's been greatly reduced and continues to be reduced. And the importance of staff, particularly people that work in the code enforcement area, they're in a lose-lose situation. When we get a complaint and we deal with a situation, there's always a happy party or somewhat happy person that hopefully at the end of the process, and then an unhappy person that is the person who owns the property that we're dealing with. And in the vacation rental world, particularly Mike Kelly, who's our full-time code person, who has the perfect personality to be in the code enforcement world, he bears the brunt of frustrations from the people that own vacation rentals to, it's important or more important, people that live here, because this is a tough situation. So as Randy said earlier, is you have further discussions. I know there's been discussions with me particularly about the business tax fee and what it is, and maybe we can change it, and Randy's mentioned some of the other things, but we continue to work on those things. But I enjoy every minute, have been blessed by seriously the friendliest place I've ever lived and worked in, and look forward to many more years.
Thank you, Greg. With that, I'm going to go to the commission. Jude, would you like to start tonight? Do you have any comments? I thought you had something to say tonight. No?
I don't want to start for sure.
Oh, okay. Joe?
We'll all start in June.
Thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Rip the Band-Aid off. And to speak of, since we speak of vacation rentals and everything, would just like to remind everybody, I have a few notes here from the HOA, which, as we all know, between the HOA, A2K, the Rotary, these are community groups, right, for the residents that get together, volunteer, raise money, and give it back into the community, right? For those of you that don't know much about it. But I got to give it to Mike Fowler because he actually gave me a list tonight, so thank you. He wanted me to mention just the Mix and Mingle is something that the HOA does pretty much every month, where we basically highlight one of the businesses here, a restaurant of some establishment. Basically they're free. They'll give the restaurants give discounts or so forth. There's food, but basically just come out if you're new to this, if you're new to the area or old to the area and just want to meet different people. Come on out, have a good time, and just enjoy yourself. He did want to let everybody know they are in the beginning stages of the Taste of IRB, which is going to be November 5th in Chickasaw Park. I think it's going to be year 16, something of that nature. Always a great event. They're always looking for volunteers to participate. Anything you can do. Like I say, it's not too tough. But given those events, the two largest are the Beach Fest, which obviously we partner with the city for both the Taste of IRB and Beach Fest to help us raise these funds, which is just dumbfounding. Denise and I spoke about this, about that group, or that couple from Reddington who just couldn't believe that the city and a nonprofit organization partnered. But out of the Beach Fest event, basically after all costs were paid and so forth, on the 22nd, on June 22nd, they approved a $2,500 check to the St. Patrick Catholic School. This is to help fund and round out their budget to build a new kitchen that will allow the school to provide free and reduced lunches to the children in need. We also, Greg showed me a picture the other day, also recently donated $7,000 back to the city of Indian Rocks Beach, or through the city of Indian Rocks Beach, to purchase more art around the city. As Greg has promoted it, it will be a dolphin statue that is located there in 1700 Gulf Boulevard, so in the Guppies area, or County Park area there. And got a couple more donations, but he didn't put them on here. I know there were 4. But bottom line, like I say, I know we have some struggles, but like I said, between these organizations, with HOA, Rotary, A2K, all the folks that volunteer in the community, the residents that have been here for years, that continue to volunteer, that's kind of what makes IRB to me. I've lived in different cities throughout my life and have never experienced anything like that. So, just some positive news to our community and what we do.
Thank you, Joe.
It's me.
Vice
I'm going
Mayor
home.
Hosberg?
Well, on the short-term rental issue, I spoke with Greg, and I'm going to meet with Greg and Randy on the 26th about my questions, and a lot of the questions you all have already brought up, because I'm in agreement that there probably is more we can do, and I'm going to make Randy shoot me down on stuff that I think we can do, and then maybe announce that at the next meeting of what we found. Or maybe we do want to put together a work session for the next meeting and discuss that, because I've been working on a fact sheet on, what's the real truth about short-term rentals? How did they get started? How did they get so wildly out of control? And what do we do with where we're at now? And I'm really, really interested in finding out what more the cost is to the city. And can we raise registration fees, and can we, you know, make it a little bit more cost effective to the city to at least have them here?
Anything else?
So I'm going to talk about like increased inspections, the max occupation per rental, parking, and raising registration fees.
Good deal.
So I'm going to get some answers on that.
Okay. Anything else?
I think we wanted to rework the refrigerator magnet, didn't we?
Yeah, that's something that you and Lauren work
Okay,
on,
all
you know,
right.
part of that.
Yeah.
Based on what comes out of it.
Okay.
That's what
And then actually, Greg and I talked today about adding into the budget that revitalizing the IRB city website, because it's old school, it's not easy to find information on there, and it would be much more helpful if we had it in an intuitive fashion where you could easily go to the website and find exactly what you needed, and it be in plain speak about what's going on in the city or rules and regulations, where you could download just about anything you wanted. So that's going to be in the works too.
Good deal. Lots of good stuff. Okay. Anything else?
Jude's going to help me.
I have a question for you
Yes.
about that,
Okay.
about both of those things. So,
Good.
vis-a-vis the short-term rental discussions, so you're going to speak with Randy and Greg on the 26th about options? Is that what you're
Yes. Do
saying?
you want to come?
You're testing.
At what point, is this a point at which we can propose a roundtable discussion where we meet as a group and go over options, or is this something where you guys are going to do this first? Do you have a preference, anybody?
Commissioner Hausberg just suggested that, you know, after she meets with us, that she would discuss with you folks at a meeting whether there's a ballot for a workshop on that, and that's what a workshop roundtable is one and the same.
Yeah.
But I would strongly suggest that before you have any discussion, it be after we have this preliminary meeting where I can hear her concerns and provide more nuanced insights. And, you know, then if it is the will of this body to have a workshop thereafter, then that's, of course, again, you guys will also make it.
Also, Jude, you can have a meeting too, you know,
It's
with,
awesome.
so I mean, if you want to, you know, have a
Yes.
meeting and with Randy and that's also, you know,
Yes.
just the three, because you may have different questions than Denise.
Yeah, I can just see that we're going to end up all sitting down together at some point, so just.
All right. Bill?
I agree totally with what Denise said. I think that there's enough information out here. I've heard it, I've been living it as well. And I would like to be able to get, possibly before your meeting even,
Yeah.
information from everybody, what's on your mind. John, I know you have some ideas and suggestions. And I've said this many times up here based on different things. Whenever we have staff, the commission, and the people get together, we usually find solutions to things. But moreover, if we get the information and she has a chance to get with the attorney, we can find out some answers for you as to how tight our hands are tied, what angles we can go to get this heard. But I would recommend that. And I also would like to see, after that, I would like to see a roundtable or a meeting where all of us can come back together again, give you folks the feedback that you need to find out why something can or can't be done. If it's way over our head based on the state, Randy will have the information that shows why we can't do that. But if there's something we can do, I do know we went down the occupancy road once in looking as, okay, wait a minute, all these people are in here. If I were to get a certificate of occupancy for a new home, you know, 'cause there's only so many people who live there. And then we thought that the fire department might be able to provide some information. And I think the square footage requirement was something like 110 square feet. It was so minuscule, you could get 10 people in there, 1,100 square foot home, and you're right back where you are again. Ironically, on one of my security cameras at night, I can go back and review it, and you just can't believe the number of cars that travel down Harbor Drive South every morning, 2 and 3 a.m. And it's like, it used to be they'd be there, and I'd see something at 6 o'clock and get up, that was life. Now they're just boom, 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 and it's, it is what it is, but we've got to find a way to try to regulate it if we can, what little bit we can do. So that's all I have.
Nails in the road, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that strip.
Yes.
That strip, yeah, that would work.
Thank you. I'm going to start on the short-term rental. I'm going to answer some of the questions. And this is strictly for me because this has been my experience with them, dealing with them for the last, since 2014. And through the year, the first thing I want to say is the staff has done their due diligence with our 2 code enforcers. They have, you know, put together regulations and restrictions, and they follow them incredibly. I bother Mike Kelly, and he's always got a smile on his face. I feel like I call them my plants on some of the busier streets that have them, who on a weekly basis call me if they see something, send me text, too many people parking in the yard, garbage, and again, I can only speak for myself that I have said from the beginning, I will fight till the last, you know, person is standing on this issue. Been twice to Tallahassee on this, spoke in front of committees on it. We actually did shut them down. I was amazed. I did not want to go. I always tell that story because I thought it was a lost cause, but I heard my father's voice say, you know, sometimes you have to fight the fight even when you lose. And we went, and we were very successful. Through the Florida League of Cities, I'm not doing this to float my own boat because I don't care about this kind of stuff, but I think it's important for you to know that we are fighting. I won the Hometown Hero twice, not because of anything else but the short-term rentals, because that's how much I fought our legislators. We put together a meeting probably about 6 weeks ago with our legislator, all the mayors, and it was a frustrating meeting because he has spoke to us and said that the leadership does not see this issue the way that we do. This issue is seen as a rights issue, okay? And when we asked about what about our rights, the neighbors who have been here for years and who live in this community, and all the communities, not just us, all the cities are suffering. Even those that have not lost their grandfather clause, they're all suffering on the beach. Every one of them will tell you that they are. And they're scared to death that they're gonna lose their grandfather clause. So that's why we keep fighting it too. And there is absolutely no comment from the leadership of the legislators concerning the short-term rentals and those of us who live here. There's not a comment about that. You know, they don't say yay or nay about it. I was with a group on one of our busiest areas. There was about 4 couples, and sat with them for 2 hours because they did not know. They wanted to know what their rights are. And one of the interesting things in that conversation for me was all of the things that you brought up, yet never once had they ever called the police. And one of the things that our legislator said is he wants documentation. And if people don't call and report when there's an issue, whether it's garbage, whether it's noise. You know, I've had, and I've said this before, and many of you know Jean Scott on Harbor Drive. She called me one day, and I could hear the house next door to her. And we immediately had the police over there. Greg called. They were cited. And, you know, when we're told about it, we do our due diligence. We send the police out there, and that's where we're at as far as that piece goes.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Because I asked the sheriff when he was here of all these traffic stops and all their incidences, do they have a way of telling me with what was done with a visitor, or short-term rental visitor, or what was done with the resident? And they can't. There's no way they can tell.
Oh.
If they have a written report,
I imagine too, and if they're registered as Airbnbs, then we'll just cross-reference the addresses.
did they actually cite them, or was it the discussion?
Well, these are almost all citations.
Okay, so what's your question with that then? What is your question with
It's
that?
that they're telling me that there's not a way for them to determine.
Determine what?
Whether it's a visitor or it's not a visitor.
Would you
My suggestion is, you're really getting into the details that we need to get into when you have your work session.
Yeah.
There's no way to
That's
sit
true.
here tonight
Okay.
and answer that.
I just
So I was
want,
just like,
that's
I
fine,
was
we'll talk
looking-
about that at the next one.
Yeah.
I want to mention the hoteliers, that was brought up. The hoteliers, I sat with several of them, I had the opportunity to meet them, so we created relationships in Indian Rocks Beach with a lot of the hoteliers who are great guys, and they have the same problem that we have with the vacation rentals. So, they would be they are helpful, they are, you know, they are part of it, they know what's going on, so that you're aware of that. Greg and I talked about the fee increase, and we are in discussions about that, so we'll talk about that at our meeting when we get together about how we want to go forward with the fees. And I guess at this point, that's, we'll wait, we'll end up after whoever has a meeting with the staff, and then we'll make a decision on where we're gonna go from there. I did want to just mention those to everybody who's been here tonight that brought up the vacation rentals, so that you know some of the things that we are doing. It is very frustrating. It continues to be frustrating. It is frustrating for me, because I get a lot of calls on them, and I go to their homes, I walk the neighborhoods with them, and, it's, like I said, we'll continue to fight till the last person standing as far as this issue goes, so that you know that. Wanted to bring up the non-smoking on the beach. We're gonna have that, next month, we're gonna talk about that. I did reach out to Senator Rousseau, one of our senators in town, and I will also reach out to Senator Grandis on that to get their take on it. And I've talked to Randy too, so that when we have that meeting, we can talk all about the non-smoking on the beach. So with that, I'm going to go on to additions and deletions. Are there any additions or deletions tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Mayor, there's one item on the consent agenda. Item is item A, approval of the June 14, 2022 regular city commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the regular city commission meeting minutes of June 14th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item number 6, public hearings. We don't have a public hearing, so we'll move on to agenda item 7. Is there any other legislative matters to come before this board tonight? Hearing none. And we're up to agenda item number 8, our work session for discussion only, and that is about the citywide stormwater master plan. Greg?
Last year, the legislature passed a bill that required all cities and counties to have updated drainage or stormwater plans for their local area. Of course, it's another unfunded mandate. But when that was passed, I came to the commission, and as part of the budget that we're operating in now, we allocated funds, and the funds actually are coming out of American Rescue funds that the city received. The updated amount, we initially were told we were going to receive 1.9 million, actually turned out to be 2.1 million. But about $100,000 of that was set aside to update the study. So the commission authorized Civil Serve, who's been our engineering firm that we've had here for years. Hetty Harmon, for example, works with Civil Serve, to undertake a citywide review of drainage, drainage basins, pipes, where all the stormwater facilities are located in the city. And they've completed that. And part of the importance of the presentation that you're going to hear tonight is they're going to go over with you 13 projects that they've identified that over, in the way that state laid this out, we had this plans over like a 20-year period to implement, if the commission chooses to implement these 13 projects. The 2.1 million that we received from the American Rescue funds, that was designated to be used for drainage. So as you hear about these projects tonight, you ask questions, at the budget work session, we'll have another discussion about a consensus from the commission. Obviously, you'll hear more. It was in your agenda packet. They estimate that today's cost is about $13 million worth of drainage projects over a 20-year period. But we have the ability, it's part of the new budget that will go into effect on October 1st, to utilize about $2 million for drainage projects. So we'll kind of work our way through that. So I would invite Mark Frederick up, and Mark's going to go through the 13 projects, explain to you where they are, the estimated cost. And just remember, on the estimated cost, obviously the city's we're not going to be able to afford to do $13 million worth of projects next 2 years. This is a multi-year thing. And as time goes out, that some of these costs will be more, because things just cost more money. So I'll turn it over to Mark. He'll go through the projects, and then we'll have some back and forth with the commission about any questions y'all have.
All right, thank you, Greg. As Greg mentioned, my name is Mark Frederick. I'm an engineer with Civil Serve Design Group. Happy to be here tonight to talk to you about the Stormwater Master Plan update that we have been working on with Greg and Dean. Just a quick overview of the Stormwater Master Plan. It was kind of completed in kind of 3 major components. The first one was data collection and research. And then with that information, we were able to put together some drainage models, hydraulic models, and then also look at pollutant loading calculations for the storm sewer networks throughout the city. And then in evaluating that, we were able to come up with the 13 recommended conceptual projects for stormwater improvements. So most of the projects that we're going to be talking about here, they're focused on water quality component. In the area that we have, we're talking about all developed streets and everything. So within the right of way, it's pretty limited. So these are all kind of include nutrient separating baffle boxes to achieve that water quality component, similar to, you guys have several of those structures in your inventory right now. So that's kind of similar throughout. The projects that are listed, they're not in order of priority. They're in order of the outfall number. And just for general reference, the outfalls kind of go from the lower numbers in the north part of the city, and then it increases as you go south. So project number 1 is at outfall 2, and then you see the location there. It's the outfall pipe route is between 426 and 428 Harbor Drive North. So essentially what we're looking at here is replacement of the existing storm sewer system, the inlets, and adding a nutrient separating baffle box, and improving the outfall pipe and the outfall at the seawall connection. So that's kind of a quick overview of project number 1, outfall 2. So it's similar to a lot of the other ones. So the next project is just down the street, 444, 446 Harbor Drive North. Similar, it's replacement of existing storm sewer system and the addition of a nutrient separating baffle box. Just kind of an enlarged view of that. Project number 4, same general, project number 3, outfall number 4, same general area. This one, it does involve replacement of the existing storm sewer network, and then also looking at an opportunity to expand the system to add inlets a little bit farther to the west there to improve stormwater capture efficiency and route more stormwater through the nutrient separating baffle box to get the water quality treatment before it discharges. And project number 4 is at outfall 17. This one, again, we are actually kind of tying into the downstream part of an existing storm sewer network. So this one's a little bit different than the other ones we were looking at, in that it's a little bit larger system. So we're not proposing to replace the entire storm sewer network, but when we get closer to the outfall location, looking at an opportunity there to kind of expand the system, tie more in at all areas that are trying to get there anyway, just helping it get there, and then again adding the nutrient separating baffle box. And then this one maintains the existing outfall pipe and outfall structure at the seawall. Project number 5 is at outfall 27. So again, similar kind of idea, replacement of existing storm sewer and then expansion to the north and south to improve stormwater collection collection capture efficiency. Project 6 is at outfall 28. This one, the actual outfall pipe itself, this is located on 16th Avenue, just a little bit north of where we're at here. The outfall itself is actually maintained by the county. There's a structure that where the city system kind of ties into pipes coming from the county right away to the west there. So we're only showing improvements to the city-owned portion of that. So again, replacement of the curb inlet pair in the 16th Avenue right away, and the addition of a nutrient separating baffle box. And then project number 7, outfall 29, similar to this outfall 17 that we were looking at earlier, where we're kind of focusing on the downstream component of an existing network that's a little bit larger, leaving the upstream pipes and structures intact, and adding some on, closer to the outfall to, again, improve the stormwater capture efficiency, and then adding the nutrient separating baffle box. So this is kind of focused at the intersection there at 15th Avenue and Bayshore. Project number 8, there's actually 3 kind of sub components to this one. So just because of the proximity, whatever the projects are kind of slated to move forward, this could be separated and kind of be a standalone project, or just do it, like I said, to the proximity to the next one, could be kind of combined. But the idea here is that for outfalls 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37, they're all very close to each other. So a large portion of the cost associated with these projects is with the nutrient separating baffle boxes to get the water quality component. So whenever you have outfalls that are so close to each other, if there's an opportunity to kind of grab them and consolidate where you only have to put in one of the boxes, that could be advantageous. So that's essentially what we're looking at here with outfall 33. So it's abandonment of existing outfall 34 and rerouting that inlet pair to the outfall 33 system. And then also in extension, adding a pipe and an inlet to the west there on 12th Avenue to tie that in as well. So that's kind of the first sub-part of Project 8. And the next one is for outfall 36. Similar abandonment of outfall 35 and rerouting those flows to the south to tie into the outfall 36 system. Again, adding an upstream inlet to kind of get water away from the intersection there, and adding the nutrient separating baffle box as well. And then the last kind of subcomponent to Project 8 is at outfall 37. So just again in the same area there. Right now it's just an inlet pair that goes to the outfall, and this is proposing to add curb inlets along the route there, again, to improve the capture efficiency and adding nutrient separating baffle box. So the next project is 9, outfall 42. Similar idea, there are actually 2 outfall pipes there right now, labeled 42 and 42A, so this is consolidation of those to get the benefits of only having to have one nutrient separating baffle box to address water quality in these areas here. So again, consolidation of these 2 systems. There are some pipes upstream in the system, so again, kind of focusing on the downstream components. And then Project 10 is again consolidating 2 outfalls, 45 and 46, to the outfall 45 location, and adding an adjacent inlet pair. And project number 11, this is outfall 47 at the end of 2nd Street, south end. And this is a project that has already been kind of presented to SwiftMud for cooperative funding initiative, I guess funding. So, but anyway, just kind of wanted to include it with the overall list of projects here. But yeah, again, it's a relatively smaller network, in addition of replacement of an inlet at the end of 2nd Street using nutrient separating baffle box, and replacement of the pipe at the outfall. And then projects 12 and 13 are kind of in the more of the kind of downtown area here. It's quite a bit going on here as far as replacement of existing storm sewer that's smaller diameter pipes. So again, just adding more inlets to improve the capture efficiency, increasing pipe diameters, and routing that all to a nutrient separating baffle box, and then going to the outfall there that's to the right. And then the last one, outfall 52, just south of that area there on Miami Avenue. Similar kind of idea, again, just expanding the network a little bit to improve the capture efficiency, adding a nutrient separating baffle box, and improving the outfall route. So those are the 13 projects that we looked at. Be happy to answer any questions you have. I'm going to kind of go through a little quick, but kind of similar.
I was just going to ask, when would any of these be starting? If, what's kind
Well,
of...
that'll be entirely up to the commission. What we'll do at the budget work session is we'll go back through these, and you see the dollar amounts associated. You can say, you can realistically say right now we have $2 million to initiate some of these drainage projects. And Dean is out on medical leave, and out of courtesy to him, I'll get with him before the work session, and we probably will make recommendations to you on what we believe are the more pressing ones that need to be done.
That's a good
And one thing that, and we've begun the process of meeting with the individual commission members to go over the proposed budget, is that in the 5-year capital plan, there's a minimum of $500,000 a year for, under the category of street reconstruction, drainage, paving, and going forward, we had conversations with Civil Service about this. is going forward in that 5-year capital plan, we probably would allocate more than 500,000 towards match money, the SWIFT money, because it's a 50-50 match, and we can get more for our money that way. So we would continue to do street work, but to keep these projects going. So right off the bat, the $2 million will be allocated out of the budget that hits October 1st. And of course, whatever projects y'all decide, whatever the consensus is, how you're going to allocate that money, and they've got to go do the full design and get plans together and all that. So it would take security time to do that. But that's the process that we will follow to start working on these projects. And then in out years, if you look at the 5-year capital plan, the city, well, before I got here, the city's done a really good job of SWIFT mode grants for civil serve. Every other year, if you look at the 5-year capital plan, we've had $300,000 projects consistently through the years where they've replaced pipes and done a lot of creative things. And going forward, Dean and I will spend our time applying for additional monies to accumulate that money to do some of these projects. Because, like I said, these are today's numbers, and this is not going to get any cheaper. Now, one thing that I would like to say, and Mark, he's the engineer, I'm not the engineer, but one thing I just want to make clear about these drainage projects is, as we talked about earlier, we have a good number of people that have moved into Indian Rocks Beach that have never lived on an island before. And, there's the highest elevation we have in town, I think, is about 6 feet, maybe 7, I think it's 6 something. And I just want to make clear with the commission and the public as we go forward with the projects that you authorize out of $2 million and the projects that you authorize going forward, that these drainage improvements do not, quote unquote, fix drainage problems. And what I mean by that is, if we have a super moon, a high tide, and 3 inches of rain, what happens is the pipes, all these nice pipes that we're talking about adding and changing, the water runs reverse and goes into some portion of that goes into the street. But the majority of the time, these improvements will help the city's drainage system, because the majority of the time you're not dealing with all these factors. But I just want to make clear that we live on an island. After we spend, which today is estimated $13 million, at a high tide with 2 inches of rain or inch of rain, you're gonna have water in the street, because that's just the way this works. I don't know if you want to, Mark, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job there, Greg, kind of giving that overview. But yeah, as far as the storm sewer design calculations that we were looking at, or for the analysis, there's a couple of methods you can look at for the tailwater analysis. So that's essentially the elevation in the harbor, so it's tidally influenced. And there's some factors in there that we were looking at. We were kind of following the DOT's criteria there. But with the elevation that's calculated in our analysis there and kind of documented in the report, the tailwater elevation that you calculate and come up with is higher than some of the elevations of the inlets themselves. So just, as long as you have that connection through the pipe to the harbor and everything to those inlets, they're going to be wet, for the time that tide is high. But exactly like what Greg was saying, is with the improved capacity of the system whenever the tide goes down, and in normal conditions, the systems will drain better.
And of course, the other thing that's important about this is that, and through the SWIFT mode grants that the city has secured through the years, the baffle boxes that he mentioned, which is basically requiring a lot of projects now, that will greatly assist with litter and other debris that traditionally flows off the street into the water. So, the city will benefit long term just from having those improvements as we do these projects. So that's a very positive thing.
Any questions for Mark or Greg? Yes, Bill.
Yeah, I was going to ask a little bit about the nutrient separating baffle box. That was a $4 engineer question. I like that. I did a little research and I found it in Australia, and I'm sure this is not the same thing, but they had taken at the outfall or off the street, okay, and if they took the grate off, they put like a mesh in there, and it acted like a filter. Of course, the water went on through. Anything like that? Have you seen what I saw from Australia?
Yeah, there's several different products you can kind of consider for that application. So one of the advantages of the nutrient separating baffle box, like we were kind of looking at for this, I guess there's different chambers, so you're kind of getting the same thing, right? So like the boxes are pretty large.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be at least 4 feet wide and like 8 feet long. So they're separated into different chambers, and they've got different access ports. So they'll capture the sediments, the total suspended solids from the water, will settle down, and then there's a basket in it to catch the larger floatables, and then there's also a screening baffle that has filter media in it, and you can kind of pick different options there based off of what you're trying to target for your nutrient removal and everything.
Maintenance-wise, how often do those have to be checked in or cleaned?
Yeah, there's
What cost?
7 that are already in the city's system. So generally, it's probably about, it's going to be seasonally variable, but in the summertime when we're training a lot, at least probably once a month after major rainfall event would be a good time to check them as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And who does that?
Who does that?
Yeah.
Dean's group.
Highly specialized extraction methods.
It's not a fun job.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on. Anything else? Thank you, Mark, for your
Thank
comment.
you. Appreciate it.
You might have some questions from the public if they're over here.
I'm gonna, at this time, is there anyone on the public who'd like to come up, has any questions about the outfall projects? Hearing none, I'm gonna close the public comment. And we're on other business, and I just wanted to mention, Jeff, our reporter, did an article last week in the paper. I don't know if any of you saw it, but it was kind of a cool public interest story about, I got a call from this lady in Largo, her name was Pat, had been living here for 4 months. And she said that there was a group of people that were gonna meet at the Historical Museum that her neighbor was Mrs. Walsingham.
Ah.
And so the Bees, who are one of our oldest families that are still living, that are from, they own the boat house. They asked, the Historical Museum, if you don't know, that's right by my house. So I walked over, and the interesting part of that whole thing was the Bees had went to school with Mrs. Walsingham when Anona Elementary was only 2 classrooms. And all of the 2 classrooms were from 1st to 3rd grade, so everybody was together in the classroom, and they had not seen each other for 70 years. Okay? And Jeff wrote a really great article. I mean, it was quite incredible listening to them, and then I guess a couple years later, they put a 3rd classroom on Anona. I guess they got more students. And of course, this was back when the bridge over here, they had to crank it so that they could get around. I mean, it's just like it was just the whole thing was just crazy. So, but one of the questions that, after I left, Jeff, that I wanted to ask you was, so Mrs. Walsingham, was she the granddaughter or was she the daughter of?
She said that her father was Jesse Ansel Walsingham's, her uncle. Jesse Ansel Walsingham was her father's uncle, is what she told me. And he was the original Walsingham kind of settler. Her father, that was her uncle, her father's uncle. So took her a little bit to get it to me as well. But
it was very cool. And we found out now that there's someone else that lives near Georgie Ann Thompson who's a part of that group. So we're going to try to get them together, and I'm hoping at a meeting in the near future when we have time to bring them all here and so that everybody can see them, because they really are, you know, some of the great, you know, history of this community. So anyway, I just wanted to bring up, I thought it was a really cool piece, and thank you for writing it. Is there any other business coming before this board? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to dismiss.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion. Thank you for coming tonight. We'll see you next week. We have a budget meeting on the 26th at 4 p.m. and also that same night, we have a special city commission